Welcome back to Old Guy REI. Mikey and I are back. We're going to recap the last week's accountability meeting highlights. And again, we had quite a few great topics. I think we had some good news. Chester was going to be signing, now it would be last Friday. So he closed on his first property. And I was lucky enough to get him on an interview. So that episode is on our channel as well. And Sean in Atlanta is under contract there for a duplex. So we were able to go over his inspection report with him a little bit about a couple of concerns he brought up. I think that was helpful. Mikey, he was talking about the things that came up on his inspection that were probably things, items that should be handled as far as repairs go. But he was asking how important certain items were. Were there some repairs he should do before others? And when we went through that list, there were things like, I think one of the dishwasher discharge hoses was not properly installed, and there was some issues with drainage outside. When you've purchased the last couple of properties that you have, how did you handle those repairs? Did you do them right away, or was there a list or a chronological order that you did them in as far as safety and health?
We worked with property management, and along with the contractor, we kind of looked over the list. Then we kind of prioritized, which should come first, which should come later. And actually, in conjunction with insurance, when they did the inspection, they kind of set priority too. So it's kind of a mix of all those.
That's right. I remember your insurance company actually sent you a notice, I think, that you had to get certain things repaired or they were not going to continue insuring the property.
Mhm. I was canceled twice for my insurance, so we really had to work on more of the exterior of the house. We got all those fixed up, but because of the off and on rain during that time, we couldn't get chimney work done in the allotted time. So we had the contractor write a letter stating that due to the weather, we're unable to finish the work as the deadline approaches. So insurance accepted that letter and said, okay, we'll accept this and we'll extend the insurance. Just make sure that you're able to complete it as soon as weather permits. So later down the line, they were able to get to it in a timely fashion and was able to get that insurance reinstated.
Okay, great. Yeah, I remember you getting that completed. That was a happy day. Um, Jacob had asked also about underwriting deals, and we were talking about the difference between like underwriting a single family home versus multifamilies, because in, in my experience, a single family home is fairly straightforward, right? The tenant takes care of all the utilities, they are supposed to take care of the yard and things like that. But when you step up to a multifamily, duplex, triplex, or quad, a lot of times there's some landlord paid utilities. In our case, it's water and trash in the Missouri market. Both your properties are single family,
Single family.
and the tenants basically take care of all the utilities themselves.
Yes.
Okay. Um, there was also mention of somebody asking if any of the other people in the group were experiencing what they called rent degradation. And we took that as rents slowing down or decreasing in anybody's market. Have you experienced that in your market?
I have not seen when I'm tracking rents, the way I kind of do it is I use hot pads because you can heart all the rental listings in the market you're looking at or the counties you're looking at. Then that way, once it gets rented, I just verify that with Zillow to make sure that it was actually rented. Then you get an email listing or email notification that it has unfortunately been taken off of hot pads. So that way I just type in unfortunately into my Gmail so that I can just take reference and have my rent box, kind of like what Matt Lumberjack Landlord talks about. And then I just kind of notate that for each of the sections I'm looking at.
Okay, yeah, and I guess most of us wouldn't experience that unless we're having a turnover or something. But I think last week on a different call that you and I were on, people mentioned that the HUD FMR had been released for 2025. And, we just obviously jumped on quick to see what rents were going to be for 2025. And I noticed, because we're in a few different markets, that the first one I looked up, the rents are actually lower in 2025 than they were in 2024. And I panicked a little bit. So I checked all of the other markets, and all the other markets are up either, $50 at least to $150 in some markets. It was just that one zip code that I checked first that is going in the opposite direction. It was actually down about $100 from year to year. So that's one thing that we try to keep track of. And do you monitor the FMR in your market? And what is your market?
My market is Pittsburgh, and when I compared it to last year, there's a jump to 290 on the one property and then 80 on the other property when I compared.
So they both went up.
Mhm.
Okay, that's good news. A couple of other things that were brought up, and I brought this one up. I was wondering what other landlords do, like as far as in their units, do they ever remove the garbage disposals? I've heard of some landlords taking out garbage disposals and dishwashers specifically because those seems to be the highest maintenance calls that they get. And I guess what the consensus was that it's almost market dependent or class of neighborhood dependent, because somebody in say a C class neighborhood might not care too much about a garbage disposal, but somebody in a B class area would expect there to be a garbage disposal. How do you feel about that? I've had tenants call in for a plumbing repair when they got a rag stuck in the garbage disposal. That's something that I think they should be charged for anyway, but now I'm just having the disposal removed after the tenant moves out.
Yeah, it was fun listening in because I've never had a garbage disposal yet. So it's kind of interesting how I think it was Chris talking about, the tenants could be more aggressive in what they're putting down in the garbage disposal that could affect going into the sewer. So, I'm still learning, and that was kind of interesting, that discussion.
Yeah, that's true. It seems like tenants worry less if there's a garbage disposal because they think it's chewing up everything and, spitting it down the sewer line. But those big things that they stick down the drain, if they don't get past the disposal, then that's where the issue's at. As far as maintenance on units goes, some some landlords were saying that they require their tenants to change the AC filter annually. And we were just wondering how do you prove that your tenant actually changed it? And most of them were just saying they just in an email they ask them, did they do the annual filter replacement, and they get their response, and that's good enough for them. I don't think there's another way to verify that the filter's been changed unless you go there yourself and look. Have you had any experience with that?
No, luckily I just rely on management to kind of take care of things.
Yeah, that's where we're at too, because we have property management for all our units as well. And we'll do an annual inspection, and that's part of the annual inspection. So that's the only way we've been able to do it so far as well. I think Jason was asking a question about whether it would be a benefit to put washer and dryer in the basement. He has a fourplex, and the basement has connections for washers and dryers. And he was just asking if everybody thought that would be a benefit or not. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, because when the group was talking, they're thinking about, just having the one added, just kind of have a trial run on that and see what happens. And if that goes well, where all the tenants can work together on how they're using or maybe scheduling times to use the washer. And if that works out okay, then maybe adding a second one.
Yeah, it seems like it still might be tough because he's got 4 tenants in that one building. The other thought that crossed my mind while we were talking about that was people inviting their friends and family over to do their laundry because, you know, and it doesn't matter if it's in their unit or if it's in the basement, that could become an issue as well as far as how long the units last, wearing them out sooner rather than uh, their regular lifespan.
Yeah, I was interested because they talked about the coin operated laundry, and I wish there was more discussion on that because that one sounded interesting. Me.
Yeah, I've thought about that in the past before too, but you know, if it's coin operated, you got to have somebody go and collect the coins. If you're not close enough, for one, how do you find someone trustworthy that's not going to steal half your quarters and that kind of thing? And if you have someone that goes to collect the coins, you obviously need to pay them for their time. So is that going to balance out? Is it worth the trouble? Uh, Chris had mentioned that it's been kind of a headache having multi-use properties. I guess he has a couple that are partially residential and partially commercial. And the commercial side is a little tougher to get rented out. Also, depending on the tenant that's going to move in, if it's going, say, from, I don't know, say if it was a little kitchen or sandwich shop or something, and you can't rent it to another sandwich shop, but you rent it to a hairdresser, then the equipment needs to be changed. Who pays for that? He mentioned sometimes the tenant will absorb the cost of that. If the landlord does it, then obviously the rent needs to be higher and they got to recoup their money somehow. So that's a little difficult. And also, if you're going from commercial to residential, he mentioned that sometimes you have to get the city involved to change the utility connections. And he was seeing that he was going to have to dig up the street um, and pay the city for that work to, I think it was to add utilities if he was going to go residential. But that's something to think about. He just said it was quite a challenge. And I know you and I recently talked about some things we're going through. I think you're in the middle of an eviction right now, and we're going through some maintenance issues. And in recent videos that I've done, I was kind of talking about, how we started this channel to try to help people get started investing in real estate. And the fact that all of our mentors are always honest with us, telling us, the good and the bad side of real estate investing and what they've gone through in the past. But it seems like when I think about it and sharing the things that we're going through right now, it might deter people from wanting to get started in real estate. But then after thinking about it, I thought at least the people that are listening have all the information and can make a better decision on whether they want to jump in or not. I've shared with you, and in another video, I shared what we're going through on the triplex, but hearing that kind of information, do you think that would have stopped you in the beginning from investing?
I don't think so. It's, we all have our own journeys that we go on, and you know, I really like that they talk about the 5 years of suck because that really helped me prepare for what was to come. And I'm making a ton of mistakes, so I'm just trying not to repeat those mistakes and just trying to get better, hopefully with every next investment and just being in the group, listening in. I'm learning so much, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, I think Cynthia brought up a point earlier about how it is helpful to talk about the what we might call the bad times, but um, because on the one hand, like I said, it gives people the correct information. about what can really happen. But hopefully they're seeing how we're working through the issues. And there's a lot of people in the group that have gone through a lot more than we have. So I would encourage people to share the negatives, the negative aspect of their real estate journeys as well. So hopefully, whether it's through this video or on the channel, um, they can connect with us. The East Coast Accountability Group happens on Sundays at 12:30 Pacific. There was a great meeting today, and I think everybody can get help there, uh, even if it's just someone just to talk to and listen to what they're going through is helpful because most of us can understand where they're at. One of the things that came up that we're going to be talking about this coming Wednesday, it'll be one of the topics, was I think it was Chris that was asking how many landlords self-manage versus use property management and what the experience is either way. So I know you have property management, obviously, you're in Hawaii investing in Pittsburgh, and we're investing remotely. So all of our properties are managed by property managers as well. So I think that'll be a great discussion. And we'll look forward to doing another highlight after that meeting takes place.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to congratulate Sean and Chester. You had that interview with Chester. That was great. So learning from that. And it was real interesting because as Sean was going through the inspection report, he had mentioned there's that section of piping. And we're kind of talking about, oh, what would be the best approach to that if you want to do heat tape, if you want to do insulation, you want to change that to PEX. And I thought you made a great point when you're talking about the transition going from copper to PEX. So yeah, that'd be great if you could talk more on that.
Yeah, I think he brought that up because he had learned from the existing tenants that there was a pipe burst. And since that house is on a slab, all the plumbing is up in the attic. So I guess it wasn't well insulated and the pipe froze and caused a leak. So yeah, changing it to PEX, I would say PEX A, there are two versions, and PEX A can expand when it freezes several times its size and not burst. So, but what I was saying was you have to transition from copper to PEX somewhere. So wherever it goes from copper to PEX, you still want to make sure that portion is insulated and protected from the cold. And yeah, that kind of stuff. Those are the kinds of things we were just talking about. All of that is helpful. And I put a video, it must be on Instagram, about the difference between PEX A and PEX B. So if anybody wants to check that out at Old Guy REI on Instagram, I like to do those because somebody had commented they didn't realize there was a difference between the two types of PEX, but there's obvious differences. So that kind of stuff I hope is helpful.
And that story you told about the hot PEX, and I guess
So,
the chemical component to that, where the coloring of it. Yeah, that was
yeah,
interesting, that story.
yeah, crazy stuff. Like I have a good friend that had a brand new home built. They had radiant heating, and it was all done in PEX. And what you are talking about is when they were making the PEX pipe and they needed to infuse the red color to signify that it was the hot side, it did something to the molecules in the pipe and it made it fail prematurely. So he had to have his whole house redone. And the company that made the piping was covering the cost, but they had to open up walls and floors and everything to change that pipe out. So that's just something that came across our radar in the last couple of years. But I've been using XA for probably 6 or 8 years now, and we've never had any issues. So fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks so much again for joining me this weekend. We'll look forward to seeing you again for the next highlights.
All right, thanks.
Okay, thanks.